Tonight on First Tuesday.
England now seems sort of a hostile place to me. There are people there who I know can get the power together to take Jonathan away from me.
The family driven abroad by the fear of losing their son. And down by the steelworks in search of the perfect way.
When you're out there, like you're doing what you want to do, you're free, like there's no one to tell you what to do.
Good evening and welcome to February's First Tuesday. In 1983, Linda and David Arthur went on trial in Chester Crown Court accused of torturing their baby. But the jury took only 20 minutes to deliver a not guilty verdict, which was strongly backed up by the judge. For the Arthurs, it was the end of a nightmare, a chance, they thought, to start a normal family life again with their child. But it didn't work out that way. And what happened subsequently to the Arthurs raises again the ethical debate which has raged since the foundation of the all-seeing, all-caring welfare state. To what extent should the state be allowed to interfere in basic family relationships? Who should decide if a child is at risk from its parents? And how do you weigh that risk against the emotional damage that's done when a child is taken into care? Well, tonight we tell the story of a family on the run for fear that the state won't let them stay together.
An English family abroad. But Linda and David Arthur are not on holiday. They are in exile.
Are you going to go have a nap now? It's time for your nap, isn't it?
3 years ago, they heard a British judge tell them they were not guilty of child abuse. Today, they are on the run.
Home again.
Behind them in England, they have left a daughter they will never see again. Now they fear that if they go home, they will lose their son as well.
1, 2, 3, hop! Here we go. Oh, the door's sticking.
This film is the story of a couple who were found innocent, but lost everything. It is the story of not one, but 2 nightmares. For 3 years ago, when the front pages carried the news of the acquittal, it was not the end of the story. In reality, another nightmare had just begun. The Wirral, Cheshire. Here, for 2 brief months in 1983, the Arthurs enjoyed the family life they had always wanted. Today, all that's left is a sense of bewilderment amongst their friends and relatives. Linda's mother, Mrs. Ida Wise, doesn't even know where they are. Her grandson was born abroad in hiding. She has never seen him. Her granddaughter, nearer home, is cared for by foster parents.
I'd like my family around me, and this thing that's happened, I mean, it's something that I would never have dreamt of happening. And I mean, why us? I haven't seen my daughter and my son-in-law for 2 years now, and I just can't get over it at all. I just hope that we can all be together again, and I can see my grandson as I'd like to see him.
The premature baby unit at Arrow Park Hospital near Birkenhead, where the first baby Arthur, a daughter, was born 7 weeks premature in January 1983. It had been a difficult birth. The baby had been positioned face upwards in the womb and had needed oxygen because of breathing difficulties. Although she was well enough to go home after 2 weeks, she was a weak child, and health service doctors, midwives and nurses made regular checks on her progress. This is the first picture in her incubator of the little girl a judge would soon be calling a most tragically unlucky child. The Byrnes were close friends of the Arthurs. They had been on holiday together, and like everyone else who saw them, they got the firm impression of a family happy to have a baby of their own at last.
They were thrilled. They were really thrilled, very doting parents. But they're very loving people, really. They were always marvellous with my girls before they had the baby of their own. And so it was a marvellous time for them.
In the past, it had been the Arthurs who had babysat for their friends. Now the Burns were happy to return the favour. On the 17th of March 1983, the Arthurs' baby was just 8 weeks old.
We babysat the baby on the Thursday before it was admitted to hospital. They came round at about 9 o'clock and left the baby in the carry cot in the dining room. They were very concerned and kept on going back to check that the baby was all right. We were a bit worried that they were ever going to get out for a meal at one stage.
That's right, they'd organised themselves for a meal that evening and we had to shove them out the door, basically. They just wouldn't leave. So, having done that, we looked after the child for the rest of the evening till about 11:45ish when they came back. And they were here for a good hour and a half after that, chatting as we used to do when we got together. The baby was fine, lying away in the carry cot in the dining room there, quiet as a mouse.
That night, baby Arthur went home to sleep peacefully with her parents for the last time. By Saturday, March the 20th, something had happened to baby Arthur that almost killed her. Local doctors had suspected meningitis, and she was rushed through the Mersey Tunnel for an emergency operation at Alderhay Hospital in Liverpool. She arrived pale and feeble. Her breathing was erratic and her limbs limp and twitching. Tubes led from her mouth, nostrils and head as doctors applied emergency procedures to keep her alive. In this lift, she nearly died when she stopped breathing completely. When they began to examine her, the Alderhay doctors quickly rejected any natural cause for the little girl's condition. Whatever was wrong, they concluded, was not accidental. Someone had battered the child almost to death. Next door, Linda and David Arthur waited to hear the news. When the news came, it would start them on a path that led first to the Crown Court and then to exile. Somewhere in Europe, one of the Arthurs' many hideouts since they fled abroad. In England, they'd lived a quiet life, David a merchant navy officer, his wife in the WI. What the Alderhay doctors told them changed everything.
And about 1:45, 2 lady doctors came in, sat down, and we tried to ask her how our daughter was. And they didn't want to answer those questions. Their immediate thing was, right, well, do you know your daughter's got a fractured skull? What can you say about this? And we were just absolutely floored. I think we stared at them like a pair of idiots, didn't we? And then she said, she's got other injuries which are not important. It's the fractured skull that is causing her to be critically ill. And you don't know anything about it. And we said, no, oh gosh, you know, fractured skull. And then that was the first we heard, wasn't it? It was 1:45, I remember. The doctor's attitude to us was very plain from the moment they walked in. They didn't tell us how our daughter was, whether she was even still alive. We were immediately classed as parents that had done this to our daughter and not even given the decency of being told whether she was still alive. I mean, only after then when we sort of said, oh, well, you know, we don't know anything about it and what's the other injuries and how is she? It was only eventually at the end that they told us that she was still critical but stable. We went away with the attitude that they'd made a mistake and they'd sorted it out. And it wasn't until the police arrived on Sunday, finally, that it hit us that we were actually truly being accused of this and that the Alderhay Hospital doctors hadn't believed us and that they continued. And it was later that we found out that all the time we thought they were fighting to save our daughter's life in the interim period before anybody spoke to us at 1:45. They in fact had a police photographer there taking horrific photographs.
The police photographs revealed a horrendous catalogue of injuries. There was a devastating fracture of the skull, doctors said. In her mouth, torn tissue, a familiar sign of child abuse. Leg fractures as if the baby had been swung by her ankles. Other injuries included pinpricks on the feet, split anus, fractured collarbone, and pinch and scratch marks on her face and body. The Arthur's daughter had been left totally blind with severe brain damage. Within hours, The Arthurs themselves were being interrogated by the police.
Well, at the initial interrogation by the police on the Sunday, one of the police inspectors said to me, "You've locked that baby up in her room, either one or both of you, and systematically tortured her." That was their attitude, really.
I felt horrified that they actually could think that I was capable of doing things like that, or that David was capable of torturing our daughter. I just, you know, I felt like saying, look, this is me, you know, this is me you're accusing of this, you know, I mean, talk to me, I'm not that sort of person, you know, that's, again, so frustrating, wasn't it, you sort of saying, you know, all my friends like me, you know, they all believe me, nobody believes I could have done something like this, why don't you believe me? But no.
The Arthurs heard the charges against them with horror and incredulity. They completely rejected the police version of events, though it could have meant a way out.
With hindsight now, it seems that it would have been a much easier path to take, to say, yes, I had postnatal depression. When we were being interviewed by the police, that was a strong, in the early stages, a strong thing that was put to us. Both to David privately and to me, that it was postnatal depression. And I mean, I knew I hadn't postnatal depression, I knew I was over the moon, but as I say, with hindsight, it probably would have been an easier course to take. And then I would have had treatment and my daughter back, and I wouldn't have gone to Crown Court, I wouldn't have thought, I don't know. But it would have not.
They told us,
well, maybe
in fact they told us that it wouldn't go any further, that if you confessed to postnatal depression, you'd receive psychiatric help, and then they would begin working towards giving us back our daughter.
There was no question of giving their baby back to the Arthurs. Their daughter, now blind and handicapped, left the children's ward in the care of Cheshire Social Services. She had become another case of child abuse. Child abuse makes headlines. In 1973, the Maria Colwell case caused outrage and panic. The little girl battered to death haunted public and government alike. New laws emphasized children's rights over those of parents, and social service departments came to the conclusion, reinforced by later tragedies, that they must intervene more strenuously on the side of the child. For legal reasons, Cheshire Social Services cannot comment in this programme. Instead, Andrew Foster of the Association of Social Services Directors has agreed to explain their role in the Arthurs case.
Social services personnel see children who've been horrendously, terribly injured in some cases, or who have awful conditions, and that's bound to have a very marked impact on them. When a social worker is dealing with the collection of information that's going to go to a court, and if parents stand accused of having injured the child, it clearly makes for a potentially very difficult atmosphere between the social worker and the parents. What we obviously want parents to do is to be open, honest and direct with us, because we seek to understand how injuries have happened. I'm sure viewers, in thinking about children who've been very badly injured, would want to have a proper explanation. How did such awful injuries take place? And the social worker is in fact society's agent in trying to bring together that information.
Within the first few days, possibly the first or second meeting we had with the social services, they told us that we were in a catch-22 situation, and that we could be rehabilitated if we confessed our guilt, and that we would get our daughter back. And that seemed to be the prevalent attitude right the way through.
Yeah, so if you admitted to something, you could get your daughter back. And if you didn't admit to it, you can't, because you'd really done it, but you weren't telling them you'd really done it. You were hiding the fact. So,
and you won't get your child back.
Until you start talking about it, you can't have your child back. It's like blackmail. But I said, well, what's the situation when you haven't done it and you're innocent? Oh, they have no situation that copes with this.
They didn't have there was no scenario for
people that really
the not guilty.
didn't know what had happened. to their child, you really knew. I mean, this is what was thrown at us all the time.
Yes.
You really knew, but you just weren't talking about it.
The way that it's being suggested that social workers may almost blackmail parents into confessing that they injured their children, it is definitely nothing that I would approve of. I mean, it would be opposed to the way that social services departments are meant to run and intend to run. What we do, however, need to know, and I think your viewers would want us to do this, and I believe we should, we want to understand why and how the injuries happen. If it's babies that are concerned that have been injured, babies cannot speak for themselves. Social services departments have to protect those children's interests. So social workers will be seeking to discover and find out how did this happen. And that's immensely difficult because by nature it happens when nobody else is there. Now, that can get misreported or misrepresented to be that we blackmail people. That is definitely not what we seek to do, and it is not approved of.
The Arthurs' trial opened at Chester Crown Court in the summer of 1984. They were jointly charged with cruelty. Linda alone was accused of causing the skull fracture. As the prosecution read out the catalogue of injuries, the press reported stories of the posh parents who had battered their baby. Linda, the prosecution suggested, had become jealous because her husband seemed to enjoy changing the baby's nappies. Dr. John Sills, a consultant paediatrician, described the baby's injuries as the worst he'd ever encountered. Radiologist Helen Carty told of fractures consistent with falling on a concrete floor. The picture suggested was of a baby swung by the ankles and smashed against a wall. But prosecution witnesses could not account for the lack of bruising, nor why the many doctors and nurses who had treated the baby before the tragedy had failed to notice anything wrong. Reporting of the case began to change as the defence now offered an alternative explanation. The defence were being advised by Dr. Ian Turnbull, a Manchester neuroradiologist who offered a startling new theory for the baby's condition. After studying the evidence, Turnbull concluded that her most important injury, the fracture of the skull, was not a fracture at all.
I think here we have a premature infant, firstborn, who was a rather weak child, is known to have had all sorts of problems in the first 7 weeks of its life. However, we do know that it was well up until 6:30 on the evening before admission to hospital. Something happened over the next few hours which resulted in the brain swelling very considerably, so much so that the child was unable to breathe for itself and had to be put on an artificial ventilator. It's my belief that the evidence points to some form of viral infection of the brain, which produced swelling. That swelling brought the child to hospital. Sometime after admission to hospital, hemorrhages developed over the surface of the brain as a consequence of the natural history of this viral infection. These hemorrhages would, of course, damage the brain further and would also increase the pressure further within the skull. It so happens, I believe, that this child was born with unusual markings or sutures on the skull, and that, as a consequence, these caused confusion and raised very serious doubts in doctors' minds that this child had suffered a very significant head injury.
In addition to the normal markings or sutures found in all babies, Turnbull found the massive contours older Hay doctors had described as fractures. But for Turnbull, they were not fractures. They were additional or accessory sutures which had been present since birth. Mounting pressure inside a sick baby's fevered head had pushed them further apart. Turnbull's re-examination of the evidence also threw doubt on the other injuries. But it was the new theory about the skull that changed the course of the trial.
In my opinion, when you weigh up the evidence here, I don't think that you can substantiate an argument that this child suffered any form of head injury.
As older Hay doctors admitted that Turnbull's thesis could be right, the prosecution's case fell apart. The defence now claimed that other injuries like those in the mouth had been caused by the hospital's own emergency procedures. There was doubt whether the legs had ever been fractured at all. The markings on the feet were not pinpricks, they were a rash. One by one, the defence offered alternative explanations for the baby's injuries. The jury returned its verdict after only 20 minutes, not guilty. Mr. Justice Hodgson told the authors, "I entirely agree with the verdict, and if I had had anything to do with it, I would have unhesitatingly arrived at the same verdict."
The fact that we might have gone to prison at the end of the trial was something too horrible to contemplate. You know, how awful would it be? Doesn't bear thinking about, really. I mean, you know, to go to prison and to go to prison for something as horrific as this. I mean, I'd rather have been accused of murdering him or something, you know, than go to, you know, for child abuse. I mean, it's horrible. It would be a horrible, horrible thing to have been accused of, really. I thought, oh, great, now we can work towards getting our daughter back. That was my uppermost thought, you know. I didn't think she'd be back with me outside the court, but I thought within the next very short time she would be. And we'd start immediately working with social workers to get our daughter back. I thought their attitude would alter and that we'd all be working together and they'd see that they were wrong. But unfortunately the euphoria was very short-lived, wasn't it?
It was, unfortunately, yes. We were probably very naive in believing that that verdict would automatically ensure our daughter's return.
As the authors left the court, a social services spokesman told the press, "It is not automatic that the baby will be returned without a court order. The authors now had increased access to their daughter, but they didn't get her back. Instead, Cheshire Social Services applied to make the child a ward of court. For the authors, an innocent verdict was not enough. To get their daughter back, they faced another trial in the wardship court.
I just couldn't understand the situation that was developing. We'd been found not guilty in court, and then suddenly there was the social services felt like they were disregarding that decision. They were talking again as if we were guilty.
Yes, and that made us think, well, why have we been through this? Why have we been through the Crown Court case if it's not going to budge the social services attitude one little bit? Why did they put us through it if we're still after it in exactly the same position? So in other words, we'd be put through exactly the same mill again.
We cannot afford to make mistakes on the issue of return. The criminal court, which I understand you've talked about in this case, is about whether somebody is found guilty of something. You know, and your programme has said what the result in that case has been. Wardship courts are about looking at the best interests of children, and it is in those circumstances that you may find that a different court, looking at the best interests of children, not looking at a finding of guilt as to who may or may not have carried out injuries, may decide that the child should be made a ward of court and should be in the court's care.
Early in 1985, the stakes in the wardship hearing increased dramatically. Linda, pregnant again, heard from social workers that the new child's future was also in doubt. It was the threat to their unborn child that finally took the authors abroad. The new child was due to be born at exactly the time scheduled for the wardship hearing. Now Linda had to make a choice. To stay and fight could mean losing both children. To flee abroad would mean leaving her daughter behind forever.
The decision to leave her behind was the hardest decision I've ever had to make. If I'd felt there was any chance at all that I could have had her back, I would have stayed.
Well, by leaving England, I suppose we really knew deep down that we were severing all our links with seeing our daughter again. It seemed to be a very big step to take. I think we probably at that time, when we made the decision to leave, realised that we wouldn't see her again. Linda was already pregnant with Jonathan, and we had been told in as many words by social services that there was a very strong possibility that they would take any future children from us, and we just felt, as I suppose anybody else would in the circumstances, that we couldn't possibly stay in England. We had to safeguard the future of our next child, and therefore we left.
I think, yes, I mean, I think at that time Jonathan was all important to me. I just wanted what everybody else has. I wanted a normal family life with children, you know. Everybody else takes it for granted, but when you've lost a child, it brings it home to you how important it is. And we were fighting, as I say, for something everybody else takes for granted. I think I had the slight thought that the only way we can prove that we're good parents is to have Jonathan with us totally, and, you know, bring him up into a normal, happy, healthy boy, you know. And then they could see for themselves how wrong it all is.
The author's daughter has been in care in England for 4 years. Jonathan, born abroad, is getting on for 2. In England, Linda's mother never knows exactly where the family is. She has never seen her grandson, who was born on the run. But because we were making this film, the authors asked if we could bring Grandma with us.
I can hear the taxi. Come on. Grandma's here.
Here she is. Oh, Jonathan, look. Ooh. Hiya. Hello. Hiya. Lovely to see you. Hello. Hello. It's your grandma. It's got hot. Do you want to go to your grandma?
Come on.
Oh, you're lovely, aren't you? Beautiful.
Lovely.
Oh, it's just a bit sleepy now.
I'll just go and get the cases.
You don't know me, do you? Is it?
We've lost the right to live in England as a family. That's the biggest loss. I mean, everything else stems from that. The basic right to reside in your own country with your child or with your children, unhindered.
I would like to be able to go back. It's the feeling that you're in exile, you know, that's not very nice. I still get angry over the way we're treated, but time's passing, and you tend to push it all down, really, all these emotions. You can't live your life sort of feeling all these emotions all the time. Yes, you know, you just sort of think, well, life goes on, but, I mean, obviously we would like the situation to be corrected. I mean, we can't live forever the way we're living now.
No. We're living on our savings. I can't really work in this situation.
And I want to
I don't receive any dole or anything, which I would receive in England. When the money runs out, that's it. we have to go home.
Yeah, England now seems sort of a hostile place to me. There are people there who I know can get the power together to take Jonathan away from me. And that's why I don't want to go back to England. Unless that power's taken away from them, unless I can go back freely, knowing that Jonathan is mine, which he is, and he can't be taken away from me, or won't be taken away from me. If I can go back and know that I can keep Jonathan, well, I'd happily go back, and I want to go back, but not at any risk to losing Jonathan. I'm not prepared to go back, ever, if that's the case. If this situation is never resolved, I'll never go back to England.
Come here.
I am bound to be moved by what happened to the Arthurs. I mean, it would be inhuman not to feel that way. Of course we want to make the right and proper decisions, but it's human beings that are making these decisions, and human beings can and may make mistakes. And the message, I think, that society, Parliament, and the media have magnified for us is to say that if there is a risk to be taken, it must be balanced in favour of the child, which could mean, in some cases, that parents may lose out. In its nature, child abuse happens in private, so there's a very high chance that it will be very difficult to know how it happened or why it happened. I really ask viewers, if given the case of very young children with very serious conditions or injuries, without clear knowledge as to how those happened, what should the right decision be?
I'd say the whole thing was an absolute tragedy for us, for our daughter, and my mother, for my friends, family. I mean, it's upset so many lives and changed them in irretrievable ways.
It's an appalling injustice, really.
This way. Come round this way. Come on. Round this way.
The only way the Arthurs can begin to resolve this problem is for them to make contact with Cheshire Social Services. It's then possible that the social services, with the permission of the High Court, who are the children's legal guardians, can meet the Arthurs and talk about it. But the Arthurs are still fearful that little Jonathan will be taken away from them. If you were a parent, what would you do? Well, in a moment, Surfing UK in Swansea Bay. We look at what the tide's been bringing in. That's after the break. Welcome back. In Port Talbot, things ain't what they used to be. At the steelworks, employment has halved since 1980, and British Steel has left its mark on the beaches too, where discharges of petrochemicals and cyanide create a cocktail of pollution. But the Welsh tide still surges in, and for one group of youngsters at least, when surf's up at Port Talbot, that's enough to float a dream on.
I love it. Sound, man. It's exciting, exhilarating. You get to bad points, you get to good points. It's a thrill, really.
When you see someone like do surfing, you go, beach bum, druggy, long hair, beach there. There's nothing like that, man.
Like a drug, it's having a fix every day.
I'm addicted.
The ladies got hooked as well. They're just going all the time, like no, nothing else counts. Like you're just going all the time. Like.
Catching the waves is just wild, man. Wild.
With surfing, it's sport you can do by yourself, as long as the waves cooperate, like. Is that right?
More of a thrill and madness. Plus, some people think it's madness. We enjoy it. Like, it's what we want to do. Like, really. When you're paddling for it and you feel the board picking up the speed off the top of the wave, it gets your adrenaline going. After you've had a good wave, you're like, come on, I got another one, like, I want to do more, like.
If I go for the wave, you're battling against the wave to stay on it, to do things on the face of the wave. You don't ride with it, you just fight it all the way in. It's got this feeling inside, like, you know, the speed and danger as well. Like.
It's hard to explain, really. Feeling riding the wave itself, like, harnessing nature's power in a way, like.
It's about 50% of the thrill you get out of surfing is danger. Either hit by the fin of the board or being kept under for a long time by a wave. It's frightening, but you enjoy it at the same time. I love the sport. People think, oh, you only surf in the summer, but well, they don't have the story. Like, I don't want to go in surfing in February, March, because it is cold, but you've got to keep your practice up, you've got to keep in good condition. And I can only surf till weekends now, so I'm getting a bit rusty. I've got to work. I'm 16 now. I work doing a motor mechanics course in YTS. I've been on it a month. Before that I was on the dole.
So if I want to take that out.
If I do get a chance to look at the surf before I go to work, knowing that I got to go to work and I'm a bit depressed, like a bit down, but I got to go to work. My grandma and granddad moved out to Australia. If I had a proper job, I'd save up and I would go out to visit her, of course. I'd like to go there because it's nice sun, surf, a couple of jobs out there, but I think I'd miss this place. I don't know why I'd miss this place, but I think I will. Port Talbot it's just like houses and car parks, but it really, it's not very good at all.
Carl Nielsen. I'm nearly 18 now. I've been out to work for about 7, 8 months. I've had no work since then. So I applied for loads of jobs this week, like. Just writing off to anybody, regardless of whether it's work or not, just asking for work. Don't get in the way at all, no. My father works in the coke ovens and the steel works, where my grandfather used to work. Driving a tractor or something.
I started in the works when I was 17 and a half. There was about 20,000 employed, and it's dropped down now to about 4,500, 5,000.
When I was a youngster, there was far more work. It was a boom town then. It was a boom town. They came from all over the country to work it.
I wouldn't want Carl to be working in the department I'm working in, the coke ovens. It's not a very nice environment to be working in. But there's so few apprenticeships being taken on now. It's very doubtful whether he'll get anything, and he'll probably have to move away to find work.
Taking advantage of the first big swell of spring, the Carver brothers at Yokohama.
Whoa, Black Betty, bam-a-lam, whoa, Black Betty, bam-a-lam, Black Betty had a child, bam-a-lam, the damn thing gone wild.
If I got off for the job away from the sea, I more likely would take it, like, but I wouldn't really want to move away from here, like, 'cause my life revolves around surfing anyway. 'Cause first thing I do when I get up in the morning is go down to check the surf. Watch surf film in the morning and then go down in the afternoon and try and do what they were doing, like. So it helps and all, watching the surfing videos.
Carl is 17, and I mean, he loves his surfing. He's good at surfing. We've all become surfing addicts now, in that our other two boys are also very keen surfers.
Wouldn't it be better if you used a screwdriver for that? That's the scissors.
I think it's done Carl a lot of good, because it's something he could achieve. It's something he could do well off his own bat. For him, surfing is really a way of achieving something, and everybody needs to achieve something, needs to a boost in their ego, especially when he's going through a time like this, when he does get depressed.
Nothing against surfing. I surf myself. All the family surf, so there's nothing against that. He does tend to do it a bit more than he should do, I think. They tend to look for work in between the tides, at the times of the tides, you know, where they should be going out, I think, looking.
But let's be fair, you know, this world's hard enough anyway, and if he's going to get something that'll benefit him from surfing, then we're for that. At least it gives him something to get up for in the mornings. Maybe it is a bit of stepping out of reality, but we all do that on times. It makes the real world a little bit easier.
Gets me out to society. You know, when you're on land, like you're there, like you're either doing this or you're doing that. You've been depressed, you've been picked on, you go in here, you go in there, you're spending. When you're out there, like you're doing what you want to do. You're free, like there's no one to tell you what to do. You feel great. In the past, like I have known myself to miss a bit of work, like, and go surfing instead, like. I'm on £1.25 an hour, and it's better than Dole, obviously, but it's hard trying to live on so much a week. Like, if I damage the surfboard, something, it's going to cost money, and it's money I can't really afford. Like, surfboard, it would cost round about £180 to £200. Oh yeah, there's times I've missed surf, like, 'cause I couldn't get this, I couldn't get that, like. I suppose eventually I'll have a surfboard, a wetsuit of my own, like boots, mitts, everything. Like, although I can't afford it, like I will go out and ask people, can I borrow them just for the surfing itself, like, because I enjoy it so much. Like, I got a substantial amount saved already, but it's not enough yet to get what I want, like.
In now.
Just pushed right in now.
The reef should be good tomorrow, like, it's a tidy size, like, should be a nice, easy 4 foot, like,
nice and clean with a bit of luck as well, eh?
Just have to get up about 7 in the morning.
I know, I'll come down pretty absolutely 9. Payday tomorrow, trip on Saturday, Mac, what do you reckon?
Where?
I don't know. I wouldn't mind going to Portugal, like, cheap down there.
France is alright, no, weird.
South of France. For all the money in the world, where would you go, Egg? No, what surfing spot would you go to, like? It's obviously Hawaii, like. Hawaii. I think I would go to Waikiki, like, a Bondi Beach, something like that.
Tahiti, I would say, wouldn't mind.
Well, I think everyone likes to surf in Hawaii, doesn't they? That's the place. And I suppose, like, LA, Los Angeles, California, but I don't think I'd be going out there. It's a bit steep, the air prices, isn't it? So I think I'm stuck, yeah, all my life. Unless I win the pools or something like that. one like hot knives. Yeah.
One of our worries down there is the pollution aspect, because it has been fairly high, the pollution on the beaches recently. You know, readings have been taken and there have been record of cyanide in the water, and of course it isn't ever brought out into the open of where it's coming from. If they see the pollution a bit bad one day, then hopefully they'll use their common sense, just leave it off for a day or two until it clears. But you can't really stop them. They're getting too much out of it for that.
Oh yeah, we've got the steelworks over there, and we got the BP down the bottom there, all polluting Aberafan.
Up until recently, we used to have the sewage going out along the river mouths whenever we surfed the reef over there. Used to have everything floating past in toilet paper a lot, like anything you've done previously.
I have swallowed a couple of mouthfuls, like it's not very pleasant. It felt a bit nauseated in the water, like. Like Robbie said earlier on, he's been surfing years. He hasn't come down with an infection or illness. I haven't either, but I suppose you could. It's just a chance you got to take when you go in there, like. You don't worry about it. You don't worry, or when you're in there, like you're in there, you don't care what happens, like as long as you enjoy yourself.
Sometimes, when the water is really, really cold, mainly in January, February, when you duck dive in the waves, you get ice cream head. Your head is just thumping. If there's a big set and you go under about 3 or 4 of them, the pain in the head is just too much to take. Like you've just got to turn around and go out. You can't take no more.
Snapped out, like. Okay. Come on, somehow. There was jammed in for it. Yeah, snapped out, like. Bit of a bummer in there. See what we can do here. Worth asking him, innit? Finn come out. I was in the surf the other day now. It's Finn come out, like. You can go to school a bit.
It's not worth fixing it, to be honest. I think the resin's going to be worth more than the board.
Yeah.
Take it down the beach, set light to it and push it out to sea. No, it's not worth bothering with.
Just have to have the new one, haven't I?
Yeah, have to see Roger.
Hello, Robbie. What do you have?
Bag chips, please, Ron.
Bag of chips. Want them open?
The depression has hit Port Talbot very, very bad.
You've been down surfing today?
Yeah.
What was it like? Was it rough?
Yeah.
But I suppose you've got to keep a little dream alive, and it's nice to see that they go on the beach and, you know, they entertain themselves. The only trouble is it does cost a lot of money for the likes of boards or any sort of surfing equipment.
It'll be a while now, like, for I've got a board, like, now for a while, like. So, I don't know what to do, like, no.
Moggy's not using that board. Do you want to borrow that one?
Oh, yeah? Do you mind?
No.
Just
No, you can have that.
Oh, pick it up later, eh? Oh, cheers, Ron, thanks.
All right.
Yeah, Sam.
We try to do what little we can. It was a suggestion mainly from the boys to supply a board, which we done, and it was a sort of a reciprocal sort of thing as far as we were concerned. We put our name on the board, and we get a bit of advertising out of it. because depression perhaps is a reality, but one shouldn't speak negatively of it.
You want to take the board now, Rob? Yeah, do that. Be careful.
You've got to keep a dream alive. It's our dreams that keeps us going forward. So why should I kill their dream? It's like surfing, say, in Hawaii or someplace like that there. We've got our little Hawaii here, and it's nice to keep it alive.
Surfing through a wave of depression in Port Talbot. May they live to tell the tale. And that's all from First Tuesday for this month. We'll be back in March. Until then, good night.